The road is a harsh mistress. She offers freedom, yes, but demands payment in blood and sacrifice. We are the Black Flag MC, and they call us outlaws. They see the patches, the chrome, the hard lines etched by years of living outside the fences, and they pass judgment. But they do not see the code. They do not know the weight of the founding patch and the curse it carries. Decades ago, when the first 12 brothers sewed the Reaper onto their backs, it wasn't about drugs or turf wars. It was about standing up when everyone else stayed sitting. It was about protecting the forgotten, the ones the law either couldn't or wouldn't save. Our original pact wasn't with a dealer or a politician. It was with the ghosts of the American frontier, a promise of road justice. The curse they speak of isn't bad luck. It's the burden of that promise. It's knowing that when the bell tolls for an innocent, we are the only ones who will answer. And sometimes answering that bell means becoming exactly what the law fears. The last few months had been quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that precedes a thunderclap. Our president, grave, a man whose face looks like it was carved from granite and regret, kept the chapter tight. We were running clean, or as clean as outlaws can run, focusing on legitimate freight and the quiet, almost invisible charity work that kept our coffers full and our reputation, among those who matter, solid. But the whispers started down in Red Rock County, a place where the dirt is cheap and the justice is cheaper. The target was a family, the Millers, good people, a retired couple trying to run a small, sustainable farm. Their piece of land, however, sat right on the edge of the new interstate development, a multi-billion-dollar project backed by corporate money and local politicians with appetites bigger than their ethics. For months, the Millers refused to sell. They refused the lowball offers. They refused the veiled threats. They believed in the system. They believed the law would protect them. They were wrong. The pressure turned to pure malice. First, the water was contaminated. Then, their equipment vanished. Then, the real terror began. A crew of hired muscle, wearing cheap disposable masks and cheaper leather jackets, the kind of thugs who think violence is a hobby, started paying visits. They weren't MC members, not even close. They were proxies, shielded by the impenetrable armor of corporate plausible deniability. They were there to break spirits, to send a message, give up the land, or lose everything. One night, the thugs escalated. They weren't just vandalizing anymore. They tied up the Millers, threatened their 2 grandchildren who were visiting for the summer, and started pouring gasoline over the ancient farmhouse. The goal wasn't just to buy the land. It was to erase the history, to make an example. But one of the grandchildren, a smart little girl named Lily, managed to slip her bonds just long enough to grab her grandfather's old satellite phone. She didn't call the sheriff. She called the only number Mr. Miller had ever been told would bring help outside the lines, Graves' private unlisted line, a number given years ago after Graves' MC saved the Miller's neighbor during a flash flood, a forgotten favor, called in at the absolute last minute. The call came through our clubhouse late, just as the last of the beer was going flat. The voice on the other end wasn't Graves. It was Rattler, our sergeant-at-arms, a man whose patience had been worn down to a razor edge by years of watching the world turn a blind eye. He played the static, drenched recording of Lily's plea over the PA system, the sound of a little girl whispering, "They're burning us out. Please, the men in the black vests. They're going to hurt Grandma." Rattler's voice was low, lethal, when he cut the recording short. Red Rock County, Miller Farm, 10 minutes ago. They aren't looking for a fight. They're looking for an execution. Graves stood up slowly. His eyes, usually heavy with world weariness, were cold and clear. He didn't need to ask for a vote. Every brother in the room, from the oldest veteran to the newest prospect, was already moving for the gear. The code was absolute. The protection of the innocent is not a negotiation, it is a foundation. The founding patch demanded action. This was our purpose, our curse. The law had failed the Millers. Now it was time for the road justice to roll. We mounted up. The sound of 30 bikes firing up in unison is not a sound of celebration. It's a declaration of war. We weren't riding out as criminals. We were riding out as the last defense for a family cornered by greed. The plan was simple, brutal, and fast. Arrive, secure the innocents, and eliminate the threat, not with finesse, but with the overwhelming force of men who have nothing left to lose but their honor. The ride to Red Rock was a blur of chrome and black leather, the lights of the city fading into the long, dark stretch of highway where true justice resides. We weren't just chasing the thugs, we were chasing the ghosts of our past, proving that the patch still meant something more than a warrant. The miller's farm appeared as a flickering orange stain against the black night. The smoke was thick, the smell of burnt wood and fear was carried on the wind. The thugs, 6 of them, looked like amateurs playing dress-up, their movements sloppy, but their intent clear. They were laughing, holding Mrs. Miller at gunpoint while the farmhouse began to catch fire in earnest. They never saw us coming. The bikes killed their engines a quarter-mile away, gliding in on silent momentum, our boots hitting the dirt in practiced, synchronized silence. They were cornered, and the black flag had dropped. This wasn't a warning. This was the reckoning. This was the cost of trying to steal the land of the forgotten. The first swing, the first cry of pain, the first definitive act of honor among thieves. The code demanded nothing less. The curse was upon them now. The silence broke like glass. It wasn't the roar of our engines that shattered the night, but the impact of a steel-toed boot against the chest of the biggest thug, the one holding Mrs. Miller. Grave moved with the economic fury of a man who has perfected violence into an art form. The thug's cheap pistol clattered onto the dirt, useless. Grave didn't waste a second on him, his eyes already scanning for the children. Rattler and Switch, our road captain, were already securing the Millers, cutting their bonds with the speed of men used to field repairs under pressure. The priority was the innocents, always the innocents. The thugs, momentarily stunned by the sudden, overwhelming appearance of 30 patched-out riders, scrambled to regroup. They were bullies, not fighters. They relied on fear and surprise. They had neither now. Their desperation made them sloppy. One of them, a lanky kid with a nervous tremor, pulled a knife and lunged toward the elderly Mr. Miller, but a black flag prospect, Tack, intercepted him. Tack wasn't big, but he was fast, and he had the cold, focused resolve of someone fighting for a cause bigger than himself. The confrontation wasn't fair, not by the law's standards, but it was just by ours. Tack disarmed the kid, not with a killing blow, but a precise, shattering strike to the wrist that rendered the knife hand useless. A permanent lesson in the anatomy of fear. The road justice is swift because it cannot afford witnesses or prolonged engagements. The entire encounter took less than 3 minutes, yet it felt like a lifetime suspended in the smoke-filled air. We operated in choreographed silence, a brutal ballet of protection. Every Black Flag member knew their role: secure the perimeter, prioritize the vulnerable, and neutralize the threat using the minimum force necessary to stop them permanently from returning. We didn't want to kill them, not if we could help it. That brought too much heat and detracted from the code's higher purpose. But we would break them. We would ensure that the fear they had sown would be returned tenfold, leaving them terrified of the very thought of the Black Flag's shadow. The thugs were subdued, their masks discarded, their faces pale with a sudden, horrifying realization. They had messed with something far outside their corporate pay grade. They were now in the hands of men whose sense of justice was forged not in courtrooms, but on the asphalt, and whose jury was the founding patch itself. Grave knelt by the Millers, his voice a low, rough rumble. The children? Are they safe? Lily, still clutching the satellite phone, nodded mutely, her eyes wide, taking in the scene, the roaring fire in the house, the defeated thugs groaning in the dirt, the towering, intimidating men in leather who had arrived like dark angels of vengeance. "Who sent you?" Grave demanded of the thugs, his voice carrying the authority of a man who has seen and committed every sin on the highway. The thugs remained silent, loyal only to the fear of their employer, not realizing that fear was a Black Flag specialty. Rattler, meanwhile, found the fuel canister and the corporate ID badges one of the thugs had carelessly dropped, evidence that tied the aggression directly back to the development company, Aether Holdings. Rattler didn't call the police, he didn't need to. He simply took pictures securing the proof. The justice we dispense isn't just physical, it's also economical and reputational. We would ensure that Aether Holdings would pay for this night, not in jail time, but in public exposure and devastating litigation funded by their own fear of us. The fire on the farmhouse had to be dealt with. We couldn't call the fire department. That would bring the law, and the law would only see 30 heavily armed men and a pile of beaten-up assailants. We are outlaws, after all. So we did what outlaws do best. We used every resource we had. Our support van, which followed discreetly, carried more than just tools. It carried heavy-duty fire extinguishers and a portable water pump. The brothers, their faces grimy with soot, worked not as criminals, but as a specialized disaster response unit. They saved the old Miller farmhouse, preventing the fire from consuming the entire structure. Before the first distant siren could be heard, the inevitable result of a frightened neighbor finally calling the authorities, we had to disappear. Grave left the thugs, tied and zip-cuffed, right next to the damning evidence of their corporate connection. He looked at Mr. Miller, his gaze stern and unwavering. They won't come back, but the law will come. You tell them you fought them off. You tell them you saw men in masks, but you don't remember anything else. Mr. Miller, a man of simple dignity, met Grave's eyes. He didn't need to be told twice. He had seen the true face of the law tonight, and it was wearing black leather. "Thank you, Grave," he whispered, the name a profound testament of trust. Grave simply nodded, the founding patch glinting faintly in the dying orange light of the fire. "The curse keeps us busy, Mr. Miller." "That's what it means." The Black Flag MC vanished back into the night, the roar of their bikes fading into the sound of distant sirens. We didn't seek accolades or recognition. The code was fulfilled. The innocents were safe. The oppressors were broken, financially and physically. The Miller family had been saved by the very men the country had branded as the worst of society. And as we rode back toward the sanctuary of the shadows, the words of the code echoed in every brother's mind. We are the curse upon the unjust and the shield of the forgotten. We are the outlaws, and that's exactly where justice sometimes has to come from. The founding patch was still heavy, but the weight of honor was heavier. The road was clear for now.